It all started one quiet evening after dinner, when the house had finally settled down and the hum of daily chaos had faded into the soft clatter of dishes in the sink. I was on the couch flipping through a book I'd been meaning to read for weeks, when she sat down beside me. My stepdaughter, Emma, had always been a bit of a mystery. Smart, thoughtful, and guarded, she rarely opened up. At 17, she carried herself with a mix of teenage confidence and deep emotional distance. But that night something was different. She looked tired, not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but the kind that comes from holding in too much for too long. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there quietly, playing with the hem of her sweatshirt. I waited, not wanting to push her. Emma had always been polite, respectful even, but our relationship was more like two people learning a new language. Awkward pauses, misunderstood cues, and a constant fear of saying the wrong thing. Her mom, my wife, had gone to visit her sister for the weekend, leaving the two of us alone in the house for the first time. I figured we'd just keep to ourselves, maybe share a few meals and get through it. I never expected what would happen next. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "You're the only one who gets me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked up from my book surprised, unsure if I'd heard her right. There was something raw in her eyes. Something that made me put the book down and give her my full attention. "What do you mean?" I asked gently. She shrugged, but her expression held a weight I hadn't seen before. "It's like, when I talk to you, I don't feel like I'm being judged. You actually listen. Everyone else just talks over me or tells me what I should feel." I nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. I'd always tried to be there for her without pushing too hard. I never wanted to overstep or make her uncomfortable, especially with how fragile things had been after I married her mom. But in that moment I realized she'd been watching me, my actions, my quiet presence, and somehow that had become her safe space. Then she leaned in. Not aggressively, not in a way that screamed danger, but just enough to make the air between us feel different. I froze. It wasn't what she said. It was how close she got, how long she held my gaze, and how silent the room became. My mind raced, unsure of what this moment meant or where it was heading. Was this just a girl in need of comfort? Was I misreading something? Or was there something deeper she wasn't saying out loud? That one sentence, asterisk, "You're the only one who gets me," asterisk, kept echoing in my head, even as I tried to keep my voice calm and my thoughts steady. The moment stretched on, thick with uncertainty. And just as I opened my mouth to respond, something happened that changed everything. Her phone buzzed. That small vibration broke the silence like a crack in glass. Emma blinked, almost like she'd forgotten where she was. She glanced at the screen and then quickly flipped it face down on the couch cushion. I didn't see the name, but the look that flickered across her face said more than words ever could. It wasn't just a message. It was something she didn't want me to see. I cleared my throat, trying to gently pull us both back to neutral ground. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She nodded quickly. "Yeah, just someone from school." But it didn't sound convincing. She looked tense now, like she wanted to talk but didn't know how to start. And suddenly I wasn't just sitting beside my stepdaughter. I was sitting in the middle of something I didn't yet understand. To back up a little, Emma hadn't had it easy the past few years. Her dad left when she was 11, and it wasn't a clean break. Promises made, promises broken. After that, she pulled away from people, especially men. When I came into her life, I knew I had to earn her trust slowly. I was patient. I never forced conversations or tried too hard. I showed up. That's all I ever really did, just made sure she knew I was there. Her mom said she was warming up to me, even if she didn't show it much on the surface. But tonight was something else. She leaned back against the couch, arms crossed, eyes staring at nothing in particular. "Do you ever feel like no one's really on your side?" she asked, almost too casually. "All the time when I was your age," I said. "Especially when I didn't know who I could trust." She gave a soft laugh under her breath. "Exactly. The more we talked, the more I started seeing cracks in her usual guarded shell." She mentioned a teacher at school who had made her uncomfortable. A friend group that turned cold for no reason. Little things said like throwaway comments, but heavy if you listen closely. I got the sense she'd been carrying a lot around without knowing how or where to put it down. "People always act like they care," she said, "but they don't really want to hear it." They just want me to act normal and not make it their problem. Her words hit me harder than I expected. 'Cause I remembered feeling that way too once. I didn't know if she was just venting or trying to build up to something. But the more she talked, the more I felt like this moment was more important than it seemed. Then, just when I thought things were easing up, she turned to me again and asked quietly, "Would you keep something secret if I told you?" Her voice cracked slightly, and that look in her eyes returned, the same one from earlier, like she was asking for more than just privacy, like she needed safety. I hesitated, and before I could answer, the front door creaked open. Emma jumped just slightly as the front door creaked. Her shoulders tensed, and her eyes darted toward the hallway. We both knew it couldn't be her mom. She was out of town until Monday. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. Maybe the wind pushed the door, maybe it hadn't been fully shut. That's what I told myself as I walked over and checked. Locked. Deadbolt still in place. I looked outside, nothing. Street was quiet. Still. When I turned back, Emma was clutching her phone tightly in her hand, her thumb hovering just above the screen like she was debating whether to make a call or send a message. She looked shaken. More than the sound of the door could explain. "You sure everything's okay?" I asked again, more firmly this time. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just nerves." But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. Something was off. Her story about a classmate bothering her. That cryptic question. Asterisk, would you keep something secret? Asterisk, and now this. She was unraveling right in front of me, piece by piece, and I was still in the dark. I sat back down, giving her space but not letting it go. "Emma, whatever it is, you can talk to me.
No judgment.
I promise." She looked at me for a long moment, and for a second, I thought she might actually say something. But instead she shook her head. "It's not that simple." I didn't push. I could tell she needed to feel like it was her choice. But the silence between us was heavier now, filled with questions neither of us wanted to be the first to ask. Later that night, I heard her pacing in her room. Light footsteps back and forth for almost an hour. I stood in the hallway once, thinking about knocking on her door, but stopped myself. Then I heard her whispering. At first I thought she was on a call, but when I leaned in closer it didn't sound like a conversation. It sounded like she was talking to herself, repeating something under her breath. I only caught fragments. Words like "he knows" and "I didn't mean to." My stomach dropped. The next morning I noticed a photo frame on the hallway shelf turned face down. It was the one of our blended family, taken last Christmas. Picked it up. The glass had a small crack running down the corner. I hadn't heard it fall. No one had. That day I called her mom. I didn't want to worry her, but I needed to ask if she'd noticed any changes in Emma recently. She paused. "Honestly, yes," she said. "She's been distant, secretive. She doesn't talk to me like she used to." I figured it was just teenage stuff, but now I'm not so sure. There it was. Confirmation I wasn't imagining it. Something was wrong, and I was stuck in the middle of it, unsure of where the lines were or how deep this went. Later that night, a note slid under my bedroom door. Folded in half, no name on it. Just one line written in shaky handwriting. "Don't trust what I say out loud." My heart pounded as I read it again and again. Emma was trying to tell me something, but why couldn't she just say it? And what was she afraid of? I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the note in my hands. The words, asterisk, "Don't trust what I say out loud," asterisk, looped in my mind like a warning, and a cry for help rolled into one. It wasn't just strange, it was chilling. Why couldn't she say things out loud? Who or what was stopping her? My thoughts raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. I waited until the house was quiet. Emma's light was off, but I could still hear her faint footsteps now and then, like she couldn't sleep either. I walked to the living room and checked the front door again, locked. Then I checked the windows. Everything seemed fine. Normal. But something told me it wasn't. It hadn't been for a while. The next morning, things felt off from the moment I walked into the kitchen. Emma was already there, sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal she hadn't touched. Her eyes looked tired, darker somehow, like she hadn't slept. She looked up at me and smiled, but it felt forced. Like she was performing. "You sleep okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly.
Totally fine.
And then, like nothing had happened, She started talking about a new book she was reading for school. As if everything from the night before, the tension, the note, the strange whispering, had all vanished. I played along, but my mind was racing. I kept scanning her face, her eyes, the way her fingers tapped the edge of the table. Something wasn't right. She was acting like someone else was in the room, even though it was just us. Later that day, I went to take the trash out and noticed something odd. In the bin was a torn-up piece of paper. I don't know why I looked, but something told me to. I pulled out the scraps, careful not to rip them more. It was another note, half-shredded, like she'd panicked halfway through writing it. What I could piece together read: "He watches me. Can't speak. If I say anything, makes it worse." My stomach turned. Who was he? My first instinct was fear. Was someone following her? Stalking her? Was this about someone at school or something happening online? Or worse, was someone already in her life, someone close? That night, I heard her door creak open. I pretended to be asleep, but I listened. Soft footsteps came down the hallway, stopped near my door. Then silence. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. After what felt like forever, I heard her move again. The footsteps retreated. Her door closed. When I finally got up and checked, nothing had been touched. But on my nightstand right next to my phone was her bracelet, the one she always wore, the one her mom gave her when she turned 16. Picked it up carefully. Attached to it, almost hidden under the clasp, was another tiny note. Just one word, scribbled in the smallest writing I'd ever seen. Help. I looked down the hallway toward her room. Everything was still. Too still. And that's when I realized we weren't alone in this house. I held the bracelet in my hand for what felt like hours. That single word, *help*, was barely visible, as if she'd written it in total panic. My first instinct was to go to her room, ask her directly what was going on. But something stopped me. If she'd risked sneaking out, dropping this off while I slept, it meant whatever she was afraid of was close. Too close. Maybe even inside the house, like I'd started to fear. I couldn't just confront her and scare her into silence again. I needed to think carefully. The next morning, I made an excuse to leave the house. I told Emma I had to run an errand, just a quick trip to pick up something for dinner. She didn't ask questions. Just nodded, eyes low, like she already knew I wasn't telling the full truth. Before I left, I placed a small sticky note on the inside of the hallway closet door. Just a simple message. If you need to leave with me, be ready at 6 p.m. Don't say anything out loud. Just nod. I slipped it there while pretending to look for my keys. Once I was outside, I drove around the block a few times, then parked near the park and called her mom. I tried to stay calm as I explained things, but how do you explain something that still doesn't quite make sense? Her mom sounded alarmed but not entirely surprised. And that's when she dropped something I didn't expect. "There's something I haven't told you," she said carefully. "Emma's been seeing someone, a counselor, privately, at school." I didn't want to make a big deal out of it because I thought she needed a safe space. But now I'm wondering if something happened. Someone she told too much to. Or someone she thought she could trust. I asked for the counselor's name. She gave it to me and I wrote it down. Later, I searched the name online and found something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. He wasn't listed on the school's official staff page. In fact, the only mention of him was buried in an old local news article. Something about a substitute hired during a teacher shortage, but no real credentials, no permanent position. That's when the second twist hit me. What if this man wasn't just a counselor? What if he was someone else entirely? I didn't say anything to Emma yet. I needed more time. But when I came home that evening, she met me at the door. Her eyes flicked to mine, one quick glance, and she gave the smallest nod. She'd seen the note. At 5:58 p.m., we were both in the kitchen. I was pretending to slice vegetables. She stood behind me, pouring a glass of water with shaky hands. Then we both heard it. A soft creak upstairs followed by footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Emma's grip on the glass tightened. And then a man's voice, muffled but unmistakable, called out from the hallway upstairs. "Emma, come up here, please." She didn't move. She looked at me instead, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. That voice wasn't anyone I recognized. But Emma clearly did. Emma didn't move. She stood frozen, her back to the hallway, her eyes locked on mine. The glass in her hand trembled. The voice called out again, calm, measured but cold. It sent a chill through the air. I stepped toward her slowly, keeping my voice low. "Is that him?" She gave the faintest nod. That was all I needed. I reached for my phone, but before I could unlock it, I heard the footsteps start again, descending the stairs, deliberate and slow. I glanced around the kitchen. The back door was too far. We wouldn't make it before he saw us. Then Emma whispered, "The garage. He doesn't know it unlocks from the laundry room." Without a word, we moved. I grabbed her hand, and we slipped into the laundry room just as the footsteps reached the bottom stair. I gently closed the door behind us, not daring to breathe. The garage door was right there. I tapped in the code and prayed it wouldn't be loud. The door groaned, rising in painfully slow motion. And then his voice again. Closer. "Emma? Where are you going?" We bolted, slipped out and ran to the car. I didn't look back. Just shoved the keys in, started the engine and peeled away. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. Emma was silent in the seat beside me, clutching her bracelet, her knuckles white. We drove straight to the police station. On the way I told her we were safe now. She didn't say much, just nodded, her eyes distant. At the station it all came out. Emma gave them the name of the man she'd been seeing. She said he introduced himself as a school therapist, but the school had no record of him. He wasn't staff, wasn't licensed, wasn't even registered with the district. He'd met her off campus, convinced her to keep it secret, said he understood her in ways others didn't. When the officers looked into it, they found he had been posing as an educational consultant. He'd been hired temporarily during an emergency staffing gap, but he'd used fake credentials. By the time they searched the house, he was gone. Disappeared. The room he'd been staying in? Empty.
No fingerprints.
No ID. Nothing. The official report listed it as a case of identity fraud and emotional manipulation. But even the detective admitted there was something about it that didn't add up. No signs of forced entry. No record of him ever living there. And no one could explain how he'd come and gone without anyone noticing. We were safe technically, but Emma still didn't sleep well. Neither did I. Weeks later, as we were cleaning out her room, I found a small notebook tucked under her mattress. Inside were pages filled with strange drawings, circles, symbols, names, and one sentence repeated over and over again. "He listens even when you think you're alone." That was the last page. And the strangest thing? It wasn't in Emma's handwriting. For days after we found the notebook, I kept going back to that last line, asterisk. "He listens even when you think you're alone." Asterisk, I didn't know what it meant, not exactly, but I knew it wasn't just paranoia. Something about this whole experience had left a mark on both of us. Emma had been through something no one her age should face, and I realized the real damage wasn't only in what had happened, it was in the fear she'd lived with silently for so long. We gave the notebook to the police. They ran analysis on the handwriting, but it didn't match Emma's or mine, or anyone else in the household. The symbols and names scribbled on the pages? They were never clearly explained. A few of the officers suggested maybe it was just trauma expressing itself in strange ways. But there was always one detective, quiet, older, who pulled me aside and said, "Some things can't be filed away in a report." That stuck with me. In the weeks that followed, we tried to get back to normal. Emma started therapy again. This time with someone real, someone licensed and trusted. She began opening up slowly. She talked about how it all started. He'd seen her alone on campus. He was charming, said he was part of a special program for students who didn't feel like they fit in. And for someone like Emma, who'd already felt out of place in her world, it was easy to believe him. Easy to trust someone who finally seemed like they were listening. But the moment he started making her feel like her thoughts weren't safe, even in her own head, she knew something was wrong. That's when she came to me. That night on the couch when she leaned in and said, "You're the only one who gets me." It wasn't just a compliment. It was a warning. She needed me to notice. And I did just in time. Looking back, I realized how important it is to pay attention to the small things. The quiet changes. The whispers. The tension behind a smile. Emma didn't cry for help the way we expect. She did it in pieces through notes, body language, and subtle glances. And if I hadn't been looking close enough, I might have missed it. Eventually, her mom came back home and we sat down as a family. There were still hard days. Sometimes Emma would wake up from nightmares. Sometimes she didn't want to talk at all. But things got better. The house felt lighter. She started smiling again, really smiling. Her eyes, once shadowed with fear, slowly found calm. We never heard from him again. No one ever did. Life moved forward, but we never forgot. There was one night, months later, when Emma and I were watching a movie, just the two of us on the couch again. She looked at me suddenly and said, "Thank you for listening." That was it. Just those words. And for the first time since all of it, I truly believe she felt safe again. Sometimes the scariest stories don't end with a scream. They end with silence. But if you're paying attention, you'll hear what matters.